But do not be discouraged. Just because you can't see them doesn't mean they're not there. I just, sometimes when I tag guys in my Instagram story, like if I see them doing their cardio or something and I repost it, they can DM me and I see it. And one guy was asking me a very good question. He's like, Sam, how do I not think about getting soft in an off season, right? How can I be okay with putting on some body fat for the sake of growth? And I came back for a decent paragraph, and it's like I just try to think about the goals that go along with either bulking up or cutting down. When I'm bulking up, like right now, I want nasty sets. I want to feel like my skin is gonna rip in half because my quads get so pumped underneath that I like outgrow myself. Like I want to just have this intense exertion of energy in my workouts, leave feeling like I did something, eat some food and watch the scale go up. I'm not looking at myself thinking, fuck, I can't see my ab veins anymore, I can't see my striations, because that's just not a goal at the time. You don't need to make a house look pretty if you're in the demolition phase of a renovation, right? That's where you just got to do the work that's necessary and focus on prettying it up later. And when I'm dieted down, which, I thought I was pretty good at dieting before, but actually doing a real prep, kind of taught me there's levels to this shit. And I'm not freaking out because I can't squat 6 plates for reps anymore. I'm not freaking out because I can't just do crazy whatever, because that's not the goal at that current time. My goal is only muscle maintenance and getting as lean as I can steadily. So if I'm getting leaner and I'm not losing too much strength and I'm having good lifts, all the boxes I'm trying to check off are checked. So I'm good, And it's just, that's one thing that is kind of you have to get it once you've done it, because I know that I can build that strength back up. And in a bulk, I know that I can get those cuts and that leanness back after just a couple of months. And, I know we all get that if you want to bulk, you got to eat. If you want to diet, you got to cut down and do more cardio. But if you haven't really gotten into it, I can see how it could be a bit daunting, because you're basically going into uncharted territory for you. And, as much self-belief as we might have, there's always a question of like, all right, am I really gonna be able to do this? And that's where you just gotta plunge both feet in and say, I'm going for it, see what happens. And then odds are you'll just kind of start to get it, You're never gonna learn how to ride a bike if you never take the training wheels off, right? Sometimes you just gotta go for it and see what you can do. And I'd say 99% of the time, as long as you don't just give up after a month, guess what? You're gonna end up getting the results that you wanted, if not more, because we've all got a certain tendency to underestimate ourselves when it comes to newer things. I don't know about you, but at least for me with legs, like if I'm gonna be like heavy squatting or anything like that, I end up liking sometimes going to more public gyms, just because it's kind of easier to get amped up when somebody's watching, and not necessarily because it's like, well, obviously you feel cool if you're squatting a bunch of weight and people are watching, but it's also this little bit of like an extra added pressure where it's like, okay, don't leave anything in the tank, because in a way there's kind of an audience. So that's one benefit of the gyms that you're going to actually do have a pretty consistent, I guess clientele would be the right word, but kind of populace, because people notice. You might take it for granted, or you might not necessarily think it, but if one dude suddenly stops showing up at your gym, maybe that first week you wouldn't think of anything, right? But if you saw him again a month later and he showed back up, you'd say, oh, what the heck happened? Where'd that guy go? So it's one sort of just, extracurricular isn't exactly the right word, but it's this kind of subtle sort of camaraderie in a way if you go to the gym consistently, and I'm talking like years consistently, because then you start to see who's in the same place as you, still trying to grind. I've seen guys where
I mean, the only thing I can really remember them doing consistently from when I started working out to now is they just sit on the same elliptical machine for like, 30, 45 minutes, roll, and I can tell this guy is easily 100 pounds lighter than he was the first time that I remember seeing him. So you've got this place in this sort of bigger picture of adding to, even though it may be a little bit more of an unspoken community at your gyms, just by coming in and bringing it. It's like parallel play. You don't all have to be doing the exact same thing, or kind of go back and forth and ask everybody about everything they're doing. But it's just the fact that they're there. It's this kind of comforting feeling, to know that they're doing the same thing you are. And take it one step further, odds are they're probably going through all sorts of whatever, and they're still there, right? So the way I look at that is, I've always kind of had this kind of thought process of, if somebody else can do it, it's feasible. Maybe not like, if I watch somebody dunk, that doesn't exactly make me think, okay, I could dunk. But with, things within reason, it's like, yeah, shit. If somebody else managed it, it must not be that hard. I got it, right? The last thing I want to do is start kind of having any sort of like self-doubt, or just like, I don't know if I can, I don't know if I should hit this, I don't know if I can stick to all this cardio, I don't know if I can, keep counting every, like, that's not a thought I even want to have, And that was really motivating for me during this last prep, or I say my first real kind of bodybuilding prep, because I knew that, there was this kind of, pretty much a small group, within at least the classic physique division that I'd be competing in, where it's like, maybe, I think in the Arnold Amateur and the Vegas show, probably maybe 50 guys total across the board in my kind of division. So that whole time I was dieting down, I definitely had this vision of, okay, all of these guys are coming here to do the exact same thing that I'm doing, and they're not slacking off, right? They're kind of bringing it. So it's almost this kind of thought of like, maybe not overestimating, but, just kind of setting this bar that, people are bringing it. And if you want to be like them, then you've got to bring it too. And it doesn't have to be, hitting a crazy ass, 3-plate bench or anything else just like that as like a one flashy, kind of component of your routine or your journey. Most of the time, the things that turn people off to, kind of slowing down and really just giving up, it's the boring stuff. It's the stuff that you might not even really care about, but it just starts to eat away at these guys because they're like, it's such a chore to count my calories. And then that kind of just looseness just kind of scales to everything else. Oh, I don't really want to eat, this big ass bowl of chicken and rice today, or, I've got a bowl of ground beef and rice in the fridge. I don't. Dude, I'm tired. I don't want to do my cardio. And it's those little things that you might think are inconsequential to skip, or aren't going to play that big of a role in the big picture, but those are the things that are going to cut down the quality of your lifts. And if your lifts stop being fun, if you stop enjoying yourself in the gym and enjoying like just the act of bringing it and pushing yourself, what are the odds you're going to keep doing it, right? Honestly, there is no force. No one's like, telling you every day you have to get up to go to the gym. It's a rule. It's a law. You have to go get it. There's nothing like that. It's kind of a self-accountability thing. So for me, it's I'm looking at it twofold. One, I want to be, I want to be able to handle it. I don't care if it's tough. I'm still going to bring it. But in a little bit more of an objective sense, I want to have fun while I'm doing it so that I keep doing it and I get to keep enjoying it. So if anything gets in the way of that, or if I start to, if my diet slacks off, or if I wasn't doing my cardio and I'm like, just my recovery's off, and then my workouts aren't as good, like I don't want to even put myself in a position to compromise, the routine that's leading to everything else that I get to reap the benefits of, because I know that it's a direct cause, and it's tricky to see. It's tricky to see that like you didn't really track all your meals today, or shit, how many of you guys even really do your cardio? I'm not dogging on you. It's not like this is a personal call out or anything, but I just know it doesn't get done, you know, and whatever. That's not my routine, but I'm just saying, it's like, I know how I feel when I end up skipping my cardio. I've done it before. I mean, I'm talking like months during a bulk, slacking on the cardio, just sleeping in a little more, trying to get more rest, and it's not as fun. It's not as enjoyable, right? The lifts suffer, and it's kind of the fact that I kind of went through the process of understanding that myself, that I get the gist, you know. So my value system on those kind of smaller detail things probably is at least a little bit higher than the average lifter. But, you know, if you look at the guy at your gym, or the whoever who is like, that guy's serious, you know, I'm not talking he's 300 pounds, could just be like a regular ass 190 pound dude who's like, you know, pretty diced and experienced. Like, you'd point him out in a crowd and say, that guy knows what he's doing. I would not be surprised if they would have a similar value system on more of the details, like macros, cardio, recovery, hydration. Like, those things build up and kind of act as your support system so that your lift and your results can really get propelled forward. You know, if I didn't look at my diet, cardio, make sure I drank enough water every day, if I didn't do any of that over the course of this whole time I've been working out, I would definitely not be even close to as developed as I've managed to get, because it just plays, you know, such kind of a strong role, I feel. So that's why I'm always so kind of passionate about bringing up the calories and the cardio, just because I know it's got a very strong effect, and it takes a while to show up, but I'm sure that you'll see it if you actually kind of, you know, lock it in. I'm always scanning the Instagram stories. Like, if you tag me and you got like that 30 minutes of cardio on the machine or on the treadmill or whatever, I see those, because not a lot of people tag me on the stories. I see those all the time. You know, I'm talking like there might be 10 a day, and when I see them, I know these guys are getting after it. Because, you know, if I come in and I feel crazy strong, maybe I want to start off with, you know, extra heavy curls first before preachers or before whatever. But, you know, if I think it might make a little more sense to be on the controlled side of things, squeezing just a little more, you know, kind of damaging from the actual like hold and burn of the reps, you know, then that'll be good too. But I don't want to walk into the gym and have myself locked into just one specific idea, because, you know, I'm not totally sure what I'm going to end up liking. But yeah, I'll see what I want to eat. I've gotten some so I haven't been doing much whey protein, but what I have gotten is a little bit of beef protein, right? So instead of being like a whey isolate, it's a beef isolate. It's a little off, a little funky, but it doesn't mess with my gut. I think sometimes for me the whey, and maybe this is just because I haven't like really looked into the perfect whey for me, but yeah, I've been chilling out a little bit, just because I haven't needed to slam a crazy amount of food this off season, because I wanted to take it a little bit slow and steadier than previously, which has been working out pretty well. I mean, typically for me to get up to like 260 or in the 260s, now getting closer to like a 270, I mean, usually that's heavy. Usually that feels like a ton of freaking weight. But right now, not so much. You know, I mean, it just doesn't feel that wild. So I guess what that's telling me is I'm carrying it at least a little bit better, which I think is probably mainly to do with the fact that I'm eating a little bit more steadily, right? I'm eating more than I was a few months ago, but only enough to kind of continual steady growth, rather than trying to like slam an insane amount of food off the rip and then kind of just throw my whole system out of whack. I'm talking like regular insulin sensitivity, just my ability to eat a lot of food continuously, and then kind of just feeling big and sort of bloated, you know, which obviously I'm not going to look back and say I wish I did everything completely differently, because everything I've done so far has gotten me to this point, which I'm pretty comfortable with where I'm at right now. But there's definitely space over the course of time of, you know, as long as you're working out and working on your diet and like doing a dirty bulk or being a little bit more steady with everything, where it does need to evolve over time. You're a different guy 1 year into working out than you were before. And if you want to continue to make progress, then the way that you eat, the way that you train, the way that everything you do it's got to kind of adjust at least enough to make sure you're in the green. You know, you want to have consistent, showable, quantifiable gains over the course of time, and that's the proof that what you've been doing has been working. So if you're, you know, the exact same size, body weight, strength, every metric hasn't changed over the course of 6 months, all that's telling me, or all that's telling, you know, you, if you're looking at that info, is everything you've been doing has been enough to stay exactly where you're at, which isn't that hard. A lot of guys are stuck plateaued for quite a freaking while, and the main reason is the fact that you just got to push it over the edge, just that little percentage more to start making a change, right? I mean, it's like I guess I can't think of an exact example of something to play into it, but somebody could go to the gym, work out, break a sweat, maybe they do a little bit of cardio every so often, eat also, you know, they come home, they eat a decent amount of food, but it's just not enough. The intensity of their training, maybe the consistency of the training is a bit off. Their calorie intake is not sufficient enough to really warrant solid recovery and over recovery into muscle gain. Maybe your sleep is jacked up because you keep staying up all night playing Marvel Rivals, right? I get you know, personally that's something I've never gotten into, and I'm okay with that. But I get the allure. Going to sleep is not as fun as, you know, sitting up doing stuff or just playing on your phone or whatever. But you know, it's those little things that if you kind of start to change, shit's gonna add up. And they really are little in the sense of, you know, you don't really think about it that much. Like, probably should have gone to bed at 10. It's already 1. I'll just stay up a little longer, whatever. Do I want to stick to my, you know, I said I was going to get lean. Screw it. I'm going to Bibi Bop. I'm having a cheat day today. Any number of things like that. And in the moment, yeah, whatever. Yeah, it's nothing serious. But I promise it adds up. And if you let it add up long enough, before you know it, shit, man, you're not making gains, you're making losses. Your physique is degrading. You are worse than you looked, you know, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, whatever. And you know, sometimes it's hard to get around that, you know, be it whatever, how your schedule might have changed or your overall workload. Let's say you got some chitlins popped out that you might not have been expecting. You know, that's not me speaking from experience, but I could freaking imagine. That's going to throw your routine out of whack. You know, but that's kind of where I like to, and obviously I've never had to do this yet, so I'm kind of speaking from a spoiled position, of course. But I would imagine that I would at least try to put myself in the position of, you know, keeping my life, not my life vest, but putting my oxygen mask on first before helping others, you know, in the sense that I want to keep my regular sort of routine up so that everything that, you know, goes on in my life outside of the working out just gets to feed off of it. You know, I think we're very focused on, you know, okay, what can I get out of work? Oh, I get to look awesome. I get to look sick. Oh, I get to bench this much. You're forgetting the most important benefit of working out of all. You know, and of course I like it because it's my thing. You know, I'm working out hard because, you know, I want to make serious progress, but even if I wasn't, even if for whatever reason I completely lost the drive to, you know, keep trying to put more muscle on, and I said, you know what, I want to put a lot more of my, you know, daily focus into something else. I want to become the best pottery sculptor that I can be, and that's what I wanted to put all my extra energy into. I would still want to work out just because being in at least decent shape, it's going to help with everything else. You know, like we're not as much as we might think it, and I've said this a pretty good amount of times. We're not just, you know, we're not machines in the sense that sure, we can sit on a computer and type in an Excel sheet and like play games or like scroll on your phone, but you're still a living, breathing thing. You got to move around. If you've got 2 dogs, one of them loves to run around, loves to play, loves to chase a ball, loves to fetch, is just freaking, you know, active. Dude, and you looked at him next to his brother, and he's kind of just sitting around. He's a little on the hefty side. He's been getting table scraps a little too much. He doesn't really move around as much. He kind of just chills. Which dog would you rather be? And sometimes putting it as simply like that is a little bit of an eye-opener, because I think the answer to that question is very clear. You know, it's not something I have to hem and haw about. It's like, oh, do I want to be the I want to be the sleepy fat dog, or do I want to be the golden retriever that can basically do a backflip every time I catch a tennis ball? But of course, I guess I'm kind of putting myself into your shoes by saying that. It's kind of up to the individual, you know, because as much as everybody could say the most motivational shit ever, that's not forcing anybody to go to the gym. This isn't a tyrannical kind of situation. It's kind of up to you to make use of that motivation and just bring it. The fact that some people don't do it makes it that much more valuable if you can, because that's kind of setting you apart from everybody else. The fact that they don't even want to show up, and that you did. You know, don't forget, I mean, what percentage of, you know, total freaks out there go unseen, you know? And not, you know, because they want to be seen, they just are. Like, there's millions, well, I don't know about millions, but there's easily tons of just beasts from all over the freaking country, all over the freaking world, who, you know, we just don't really get a glimpse of. And these expos are a good highlight of just really seeing, you know, who's about what. And for me, at least, every time I get to go now, because with my regular working out, I feel like my overall, like, ampedness and motivation, it's good. It's, you know, I'm always trying to bring it a little bit harder, but for the most part, I'd say I'm getting close to as good as I can get. You can never get perfect, but that's kind of the whole point. It's always this, you know, pursuit forward. And, you know, I've had times, especially when I was younger, where I had a bad lift, you know, I had whatever happen, and it just gave me a little extra motivation to say, I got to raise the bar. Myself, personally, I need to raise my bar of effort. I got to bring it harder. And now, what really gets me to raise my bar, it's not so much seeing what I'm capable of, per se. It's kind of, you know, being able to compare with every other dog out there, especially when you get to see them in person and all these kind of, you know, expos and just, you know, every kind of bodybuilding competition that you may or may not ever go to. It's, you can see things on your phone. You know, you can watch an Eddie Hall deadlifting 500 kilograms, or, you know, now a half Thor doing the 505, or, you know, watch Chris Bumstead on the Olympia stage. But if it's on your phone, it is not the same. All right, I don't care how 4K, you know, 8K Ultra HD you're looking at it. Seeing these guys in person, it's just a totally different freaking world. There we go. That was good. I can leave feeling very proud of that lift, which is really, I mean, honestly, that's kind of the goal of legs more than anything else. You know, I don't need to go into the car and think, wow, I feel so pumped, this is awesome. You know, because honestly, right now, my legs are, like, they're kind of just uncomfortable. They have, like, this kind of twingy, just like a shallow ache, which is just the fact that, you know, I just wrecked them, right? Which is, but it's this roundabout coolness, because it's like, it's cool that it hurts. You know what I'm saying? So it's a little bit tricky to wrap your head around, especially for someone who doesn't get it. You know, it's like, if you get it, you've been lifting for a while, you kind of understand the benefit of that. You know, to the uninitiated, working out hurts. Working out hurts. I'm not blaming you for saying that. Of course not. But there's like there's this threshold that you reach after you get into it for a little while, where you start to kind of realize it's a little deeper than that, and much cooler at the same time. But man, that was feeling good. And not like feeling, you know, in terms of sets, like those were good sets too, but looking at myself with my legs pumped up at the end, nice. I haven't really been, I mean, I didn't really do much leg pump checks this off season, or, you know, I really just mean these last couple of months, partially because I know when you're, you know, if you're bulked and you put on some body fat, a leg pump isn't really the wildest thing in the world to look at. Like my way of judging, and really any pump, I'm more concerned with how it feels to be that pumped up and just kind of like swollen and inflated. How it looks is almost after the fact. Of course, that's important too, right? But legs, definitely, I kind of been judging them just by how kind of swollen and like just pumped that they can feel. But actually looking at them, especially in like that one where I kind of pulled my shirt in and like shrunk my waist down, yeah, that was cool. That'll, yeah. And of course, it's still cool to have a quad pump, but I'm a little spoiled from seeing myself really lean. For one, especially like during those show days too, like unpumped, my legs were looking nuts. Like I think the freakiest that my legs ever looked was those, like the days before competing, before carbing up, before everything else, because they were just as dry as I've ever seen them, with cuts and just everything else. Like they're literally, as far as I was concerned, just because I've never seen myself like that before, it looked like there was no body fat or anything separating muscle from the skin on top, which was really getting me excited, right? But but even seeing them like a little bit more watery, and by watery I just mean like not as dry and like freaky looking, and like full and carved up. I mean, come January, February, when I'm doing when I've got legs, it's not going to be as heavy as this, of course. It's just there's no need for it. Yeah, I'm talking veins out the wazoo, top to bottom. Like when I do that little standing shot where I got like the hands on hips and I get a big breath in, I go it's just got this freak appeal, which now has kind of spoiled me, right? So it's not devaluing my off-season pumps, because they just have a different goal in mind. But yeah, it's making me excited for later. And I got a comment, I read a comment that was kind of funny. A guy's like, man, Sam's been hyping up the bulk the last 3 years. Why the hell is he so excited about getting dieted down and cut again all of a sudden? And that's not totally true. There's a certain honeymoon period of anything diet-wise, bulking or dieting down, where you're not sick of it yet. And I never get sick of it, but you get what I'm saying. Where it's like, okay, I can finally bulk. I can finally eat a ton of food. This is great. That gradually transitions to, oh, this is starting to feel like a lot of food. I can't wait to diet down. I won't have to eat so much. Right? So it's always this back and forth of like wanting what you don't have. But the sweet spot that I feel about the bulking and cutting and that kind of off season is it's always progressing and kind of like propelling me forward, because every bulk I want to be bigger than the last one, and every diet I want to be leaner than the last one. And just the nature of those two situations means I want to get more size than last time, and I want to be leaner than last time. And that's always 3 steps forward, 1.5 steps back. And I don't mean steps backward. I'm just talking about going from like bulked to cut. There's more muscle at the end of it every time. So that's kind of how that always keeps me excited about it. Just because I know, no matter what I'm doing, be it like bulking up and maybe I kind of want to be lean again, or dieting down and maybe I miss throwing a bunch of weight around and being all like, carved up and full, because no matter what, I know that I'm still on the path that I want to be on, right? And that's as much as any of us could ask for ever. When things are good and you're on track, those are the times of just least stress, least anxiety. You're doing what you're supposed to be doing. You're good, So that's what I like about getting into a certain not reasonable, but a certain level of momentum with your working out and with your fitness progress. And this is just for the gym, you can apply it to whatever. But it's just this knowing that you're on, this knowing that you're doing everything that you want to do on the daily, even if it is just that 1 hour day in the gym. That's something you've got complete control over. You have a certain vision for where you want to take it, and if you bring it and you get to sit in the car completely drenched in sweat and say, holy crap, that was a good leg day. Look, there's a lot of good feelings in the freaking world, but in terms of just overall kind of contentness, that's a good one for me, right? That's up there on the charts for sure. I'm not exactly one for ice baths, at least not in an off season. Honestly, I think I got pretty decent additional results. I could have just dieted harder. That would have worked as well. But, I have my earlier dieting phase is like recording everything. In my mind, it's like, okay, what can I do to really just maximize my morning cardio fat burning routine, right? Fasted cardio, no extra glycogen running around. I got to really deplenish my own stores, and then whatever kind of lipolysis, whatever. So it was fasted cardio, caffeinated, which I still do, partially for just the energy of it, but also because it kind of has this sort of, I forget the exact kind of effect, but the gist is, you're kind of extra, I don't know, I forget the exact phrases. And then I'm like, okay, well, I did my cardio. How else can I burn extra calories? Well, how do you burn the most calories? Well, by heating yourself up. So in my mind, that makes sense for me to say, okay, 15-minute ice bath after cardio, because then I'm going to have to burn enough energy, internally to get myself back up to that regular temperature. And that's what we're most efficient at anyway. If you were to calculate the human body, or the human body's ability to, output heat rather than like real energy, or, like that video where a guy is a world champion cyclist and he's pedaling trying to charge or power a toaster, and he like barely hits the toast to be, kind of toasted. It's just kind of funky like that, right? But that was my logic, cardio, ice bath, let my body warm itself up. Seemed to work all right. The tricky part is, though, that ice baths are hard. But I think coming into this off season, and once I start dieting down, I'm gonna try implementing that a little bit more as well. Because for me, I just kind of feel better when I do that. It's a certain, once you're done with it, and kind of like this hard-headed, like, okay, I know this is hard, and I know not a lot of people would be willing to even do this at all. So, and if you do it, it makes you feel kind of cool. But right now, in an off season, trying to gain size, an ice bath or cold exposure in general is very stressful, right? You're kind of like constricting your blood vessels, just putting yourself into this sort of conservative state. Not something I'd want to do after an awesome lift. But speaking of legs, speaking of awesome lifts, yesterday finished legs, and I can still feel them today. I'm talking like a lot. So that's making me that's making me feel good. Just because, I had a good back day, a good arm day like 2 days ago, whatever, but I can't feel that I had that good lift. Legs kind of stick with you, right? It's like this, a little bit of a badge of honor that only you know about. I'm a little turned off by how sweaty I am right now. I kind of feel sort of gross. But if that's the price to pay, for a nasty-ass supersetted arm pump, guess what? I'm coming back. I'm going to be a repeat customer. No freaking question about it. Yeah, no, and that side lighting, just from like the full, I might have to start coming in the morning a little bit more, just so that I can get peak natural lighting coming in through the side garage door in the posing. No, that was extra cool. Yeah, that's freaking solid. So now all I gotta do for the rest of the day is just chow freaking down, which is I'm a little I've always been a little, not hard-headed maybe, but it always makes sense for me to say lift much later, right? I'm talking like, I don't know, 8, 7, even like sometimes 10 o'clock at night, and having, already eaten X meals for the whole day. That means in that moment, you're actually like totally full of carbs, full of everything. You're fresh, you're ready, and then you hit a crazy lift, and you're so carbed up, you just get like more pumped than you've ever been. But yeah, I'm a bit more open now to morning lifts, and then kind of refueling for the rest of the day afterward. In a dieting phase, like when I'm dieting down, trying to get leaner, I am not concerned at all. Whether I do a morning lift or a night lift, either way, I'm not going to be that carved up because I'm, eating in a deficit. I'm limiting the amount of food I can eat. And I think that since I started doing some earlier lifts during this last prep, it's kind of made me a little bit less picky about my training times. Just because, at the end of the day, what am I concerned with? Right? What's my maximum concern? the idea that I, hit arms at 8 o'clock at night or at 10 in the morning or at, whatever. I mean, as long as I hit them, I'm starting to think that it's not the most impactful thing on the results in the world, as long as you can have a good lift, right? Let's say you wake up in the morning and you really are not firing on all cylinders. You kind of have to wait for later in the day once you're already walking around and moving and getting some food in your system, and that's when you're really ready to move some stuff around. Then do that, right? Or if later at night, let's say you just can't stand going to sleep with any caffeine in your system, it gets you all jittery, then, I feel like we should all be limiting our caffeine intake later in the day, just because even if you can fall asleep, it ends up messing with your REM, and obviously I want as good and deep sleep as possible, because that's when I'm actually kind of, really sort of recovering. I'm not going to suddenly feel less sore and like totally fresh if I got a jack night of sleep, so a lot of angles to consider. But those, like, the more detailed that you get into the the aspects of working out, like your exact set scheme, or are you eating a meal before 10 o'clock or like an hour before you go to sleep? Those are the things. Mark's going to hit a lift right now, he just passed me. But those are the things that they have like minimal impacts, I feel. They have impacts, right? That's why I'm always going to say hydration, carbs, recovery, don't hurt yourself, like every little detail, cardio, they add up. On their own, not the biggest thing in the world, right? Let's say you didn't take creatine for 2 weeks. Are you going to suddenly atrophy and shrink down to nothing? No, not exactly, right? But everything all kind of like adds up together. But that's what, maybe 20%, right? Maybe 20% of your overall kind of progress and everything else is directly affected by the minute details. And, sometimes people will sort of get into this idea that if they can't do everything perfectly, they don't want to do it at all. And it's just like this excuse-based mindset of like, it's not even, like as though it was so easy to do that if they don't really feel like going all the way, they don't even want to bother, right? And it's, I get the same feeling when I hear guys talk about reps in reserve or how hard you should be training. I'm not saying there's no place for a set that isn't to failure. I throw in kind of pumpish burning sets every now and again, especially towards the end of a lift. If I just did 8 sets of, or 5 or 6 sets of crazy, heavy pressing, I don't need to do flies to failure at the end. Just getting a good solid burn and pump, that's more so what I'm aiming for. But the idea that it's so easy to take a set to wild, extreme muscular failure that it's like just a trivial thing, like, sometimes I go to it just kind of, I don't like to hear it. And that's coming from me because I feel like I know how hard it is, or maybe not how hard, but how much it actually takes to really, like imagine a set of squats. That's probably the most difficult thing that I do to really take to failure when I do squat, because it's literally the most demanding set of all that I've ever done, So to take that to real failure, sometimes I can't even do it and I have to rack it because I wuss out. I'm trying not to, but like it's freaking hard, But in a roundabout way, what I'm trying to get at is, if you can look at your day and some details are off, like maybe you didn't drink enough, whatever, just that is not a cue to throw in the towel. That's not a cue to say, I don't know, I didn't get a good night's rest last night, I shouldn't train today. Like there's an objective look at things where you can say, okay, I should act a certain way, or maybe back off on my training or whatever. And then there's an excuse-based mindset where it's like, I didn't really have a big meal today, I don't really feel like it, and it's just not something I want to see. So even if things are off, even if odds aren't in your favor, let's say you've been traveling, you've been whatever, don't hurt yourself, of course, but I think there's a pretty extreme value in still bringing it, and at the end of the day, no matter what happened, being able to say, I hit my lift, I went hard, I gave myself the primary stimulus that's going to actually result in gains. Abs are made in the kitchen. You're not going to get big without working out. Without getting a solid lift, nothing's going to happen. So as long as you can get that in, even if you're not really in the mood because of, this, that, or the other, we've all been there. I think that's a certain strength which kind of goes beyond physicality. Because how many guys do you know where if they're feeling a little off, they just want to take a rest day and they skip it and they just don't feel like it, and it's not cool. So I don't want to be the guy who has to cut the lift short or back off or whatever just because things aren't always totally going my way. There's still a place for a rest day, obviously, but not for an unnecessary rest day. And the experienced lifter knows the difference. There's a circumstance with hurting yourself in the gym where if something happens completely unexpected, there was no warning, it's like you got hit by a freaking earthquake. Shame on you. Whatever, right? Sometimes shit just happens. There's videos of guys where I know a guy from high school where he was benching 185 one day. This guy could rep over 3 plates. 185 got him. Big ass pull. His chest was all freaking bruised up and everything else like that. Sometimes you can't predict it, and there's no shame in that. That just kind of sucks. But if there really wasn't anything you could do, shit just happened, there's a little bit of grace in that. You got hit with the unexpected. That's part of life. But if you knew that you had a tweak, if you knew that something was off, or you didn't feel like you were ready to hit that, or maybe you should have, just whatever, that's shame on you. Right? When you hurt yourself there, that's your fault. And that's not cool. There's no grace in hurting yourself essentially on purpose, because the logic is not, okay, I think this is the smartest thing to do right now. The logic is, I don't think I'm going to hurt myself. I got it. Let's just go for it. Load another plate on. And it's kind of a fine line, right? I've been on both sides of that, where I've had, in my mind, like, all right, doing an over 500-pound squat for reps today. Let's go. Warm up. 1 plate. Awesome. 2 plates. Oh, my knee's a little tender. Okay, let's save squats for next time. Back off. Hit the ejection button. Hit the kill switch. No more. And that's a good move, right? That's not an awesome, flashy checkmate move, but that is a good move in the long game, because guess what? You're going to lift another day. You're going to lift well another day. But I've also been on the other side of it, where I was doing laying curls when I was dieting, and we were traveling because I was down in Florida visiting my grandparents, and I'm like, oh, I'm feeling strong today. Laying leg curls, full stack, massive pull on my right hamstring. I've never pulled anything where I actually had visible bruising, so I don't know if that's just a me bruising thing, or maybe I've just never pulled anything to that, level of extreme. But that was not good. That threw me off for quite a while. Those first days really sucked because I was just limping around, not awesome. And then there's all sorts of benches that were too heavy, or all sorts of little things. But luckily for me, they've all added up and given me a certain respect for not trying to rip my tendons off of my skeletal system. I want everything to stay attached so I can keep getting pumps like a beast and go home feeling good, and focus my recovery on actual muscle building recovery, not muscle damage, muscle tear recovery. You know what I'm saying? So we'll see. But once I get started warming up, that's when I actually have a good idea of what I want to do. But for these next few weeks at least, when I start dieting down, my training changes in the sense that I don't really bias anything in particular. I hit everything pretty evenly because all I'm trying to do is maintain everything. But while I'm still trying to grow at least a touch over these next maybe 6-ish weeks. It's almost August. It's getting close. Maybe 4 weeks or so, maybe another month. But for this next month, for back, I'm focusing a bit more on lats. I want my lats to really widen out. Thickness-wise, I'm all right. For where I'm at, I want my lats to really reach out. So when I do a front lat spread, when I do a double bias shot, they really kind of open up wide. You've seen the first Jurassic Park. You remember that thing with the sleazy tech guy and that one shows up and it flares its neck out. That's what I want to be able to do with my lats. Trying to beef up my traps any more than they already are, it's not really going to help me. And I think there's a weird thought process with traps where it's like bigger traps means you have a bigger back. And I think the actual situation of that is bigger traps means you have like a more kind of like gym bro kind of look. Like I want big traps as much as the next guy, but I don't want them overpowering my back. All right. What are your arm goals? Do you want 19-inch arms? Do you just want shredded arms with veins and like a bunch of cross striations on your triceps and like a little bit of fancy grain right up here where your bicep inserts? What exactly is the driving force behind your arm training, or your half arm training if you're more of a push-pull kind of guy where you're doing bis and tris separately, right? But what's that kind of overarching, like I want to be or I want to have blank that kind of gets you going? I've gone through the process of like number motivation, where it's like, holy shit, 19 inches pumped. All right, it's only 1 inch away from 20. All right, it's only 1 inch away from 21. I think I've got close to 21 inch arms pumped. Probably more like 20 and a half. Pump, like 21 pumped is cool. 20 unpumped, that's freaky. I think I'm more like a 19 or so unpumped, which is still cool, right? But I've kind of backed away from being so like number motivated, because it's like, well, by the time I get 20, I'm just gonna want 21. By the time I get 21, I'm just gonna want 22. I mean, that's almost more of just a smaller stepping stone goal. So if I put it a little bit more, broadly scoped, I want bigger arms. And that's a goal that really has no end. It doesn't have a point of satisfaction or a point where you can say, all right, I did it. But it also means you can achieve that goal almost constantly, at least in an off season when you're growing. Because if my goal is to get bigger arms, and then over the course of a month, I've gained like a 1/4 inch pumped, that means I did it. I have bigger arms. I still can get bigger arms, but I've kind of actually completed the task on its own. So it's like this twofold situation where you never achieve the goal, but you're also always achieving the goal. You know what I'm saying? So if your goal is just overall, weight loss progression, instead of like, okay, I need to hit 200 pounds lean, I need to hit 220. If your goal is, I want to be leaner, I want to keep losing body fat, and you kind of just keep it, sort of pinpointed there, then sure, you've got a long way to go, but every pound on the way there is still an achievement, right? You're doing it. So it's not so much reaching a state of being, it's more so trying to maintain a state of becoming, kind of a constant sort of improvement, or in some cases not even improvement per se, but just constant change, because you're never going to wake up the exact same guy, and I definitely don't want to feel like I ever will. But with the lifting, that's how I end up thinking about it. I don't have a day where I'm going to say I did it, but also every day I get to say I did it. So kind of a funky way to look at it, but that's what I like. There's no end. It's kind of just a continual, not even grind, because it's fun. It might be different if you seriously hate working out. You hate being sweaty. You hate the feeling of doing like a difficult rep. You hate the gym, but you go anyway. That's a different grind. That's a guy who's got a totally different perspective on the situation than me. Because for me, just getting to come in every day, that's the fun part. Out of everything I do, I can always say, okay, well, I've got a chest day later today. That'll be good. No matter what else is going on, that always gets to be a little bit of a highlight, which definitely spoils me, because then that puts me in a position of showing up. That's not the challenging part. Really trying to bring it like as hard as I possibly can. That's where it gets a little tricky. Like the last few sets of or reps of some of those, pullover push downs where I had to kind of bend over and rest. But even that's fun, because it's like, I want to push myself like that. So it's just kind of just something to get comfortable with. I don't think, we could all say if we rubbed a golden shaker and a genie popped out, Like, oh man, I want to have this inch arms and this legs this big, and I want to squat this much, and I want to. But if everybody instantly got that wish, like let's say we're living in an alternate universe, and that was just the way things were, like you could have as many gains as you want, well then it wouldn't be cool, because it's not something you have to work to get, right? The whole point of a lot of just anything that's kind of fun is the fact that there's kind of a challenge around it. It's like that quote that Jake said, it's, if everybody got everything the minute that they wanted it, there'd be no freaking point. But that's more of, I guess that's almost kind of a cope, because we're in the reality where we can't have it like that, so it's almost like, screw it, it's fun then it's hard, kind of chip on your shoulder style, right? You can throw the most expensive couch and TV set and dining table and whatever, but if everything doesn't flow well, you're kind of missing the point, like there's a certain value, I think, to just having everything in at least decent kind of proportion. So I guess this is turning on, well, I guess this is a little, I can't really say leg skipper, because technically I just skipped legs today. Now, my logic is that I want to give him some more time to recover from the last leg day, but I think that still counts as a skip nonetheless. Well, it helps that I at least hit him normal, right? Except for taking the occasional leg day off to come back stronger. But it's like, if you've got a crazy upper body and then your lower body is lacking, eesh, you lost me. Right? You got huge arms, but your forearms are on the thinner side. Not cool either. It's almost a certain kind of obligation you have to your lacking body parts to really thrash them, to bring them up and almost make them the ones that you're most excited about. For me, at least, when it comes to arm training, because at least arms are two direct muscles, you can probably have a preference for one or the other, and I think I probably used to be more excited about the bicep portion. Bigger biceps, bigger arms. That's kind of the immediate thought process. Nobody thinks of doing a double bicep shot or a bicep flex as being a tricep pose as well, right? We're all getting biceps the freaking spotlight. And now, since I think since I know my triceps have been lacking historically, I'm more excited about the tricep portion. And it must be some sort of like conditioning in my mind of thinking like, okay, well, the thing that I really want to build is this, so I want to be extra excited about hitting it so that I can continue to build it up and get it back to proportion where I want it. But either way, so if you know a guy who his rear delts are not capped at all, tell him to chill out on the overhead shoulder press. Tell him to chill out on on the front raises. He could probably spend a little bit more time hanging out on the reverse pec deck, doing some bent over cable flies or dumbbell flies, or just hit some laying face pulls. If I had to pick one movement forever for my rear delts, which honestly isn't really super necessary just because they're big enough relative to my arms and back and chest, but if I had to pick just one, the laying face pull is pretty much it, because I can load it pretty well, but I can also go light and squeeze it too. So it's almost like getting two movements in one. It's like you can do a really hefty leg extension, 15 reps to failure, or you could cut that weight by literally 2/3, do like, maybe double, almost triple the reps and really squeeze and burn them. And then that's a completely different freaking set entirely, which is something that I think doesn't get very much discussion right now, at least. Essentially the logic of, okay, I want to train as accurately as I can. I'm a beginner. What do? Is, picking very simplified, or not simplified, but very directly loaded movements, right? Rather than trying to do a chest press, attach the weight just at your arm so you don't have to worry about thinking about pushing force through your hands and it's all chest. I definitely get the logic there. But I'm not seeing any love for distinguishing the kind of sets that different movements can have just based on the amount of weight that you're doing. I think it's this idea that for every movement there is a perfect weight where you have a certain rep in reserve, and it's a weight you can perfectly manage, and you're never swinging, and it's just totally super controlled. And shit, if that was true, And every set that I've ever done was absolute rubbish and I didn't make any gains. And the only thing that worked was if I would grab the 20-pound dumbbells and do like, a 5-second hold, squeeze, slow. If that was all that worked, well, guess what? That would be all I would do. You know what I'm saying? So it's just something where I think you're better off trying to figure it out for yourself rather than just, listening to a cookie cutter approach by somebody else where, they're not even motivated to tell you exactly what they really think. I mean, half of it, if you see somebody telling you how to train and then they're also selling you a training program, would you not think that there is a monetary incentive to just try to get you to listen to whatever they're saying, regardless of its value? I'm not saying that's always the case. I think a lot of programs that get, the guys are putting out are like customly curating. Like if you have a coach, I think a lot of them are probably pretty good, but it's something to think about. I think having a reasonable skepticism when you're listening to somebody work out and tell you how to work out, even if there's somebody way bigger than you who you like really look up to and like, it's still got to be able to apply to what you can do and what you can like. So that's where I'm always not jealous, but I'm always going to be a little bit what's the word I'm thinking of? Well, I'm always going to lean, I guess, like a little bit of favoritism towards the guys who, I don't want to say get it, but I kind of do want to say get it. The guys who can basically, come into the gym and totally off the cuff come up with their own kind of workout that they know that they're going to like based on their own training history and everything they've ever done in different sets, because they don't have to be tied down to like a certain, boxed in kind of thought process of what working out is for them, because they get the gist that if their effort is there and if their pre-gym preparation was there, hydration, rest, food, recovery, pre-workout, a solid caffeination where you're still feeling it, but you're not like, doing 700 milligrams pre-lift, then, I mean, shit, I could get I'll probably eventually have to do this just out of necessity sometime that a gym wouldn't be around, but I would have no problem if somebody said, Sam, you got chest today, you're not allowed to go to the gym. You got to do a body weight chest workout at home. I'd probably get a wild ass freaking pump. If somebody said, Sam, you can't come to the gym today, all you just have to figure out how to hit arms at home with whatever you got available to you. Easy. And I'm not saying it's going to be super conventional, but look, I want to be the lifter where you can put me into a freaking, room of solitary confinement and I'll still find a way to get a pump in whichever body part I was supposed to be hitting that day. And do it to my satisfaction. Do it and still say, yeah, that was good. I don't need no freaking weights or racks or dumbbells or anything. Now, that's not my go-to. That's not my go-to approach. But I hope you kind of get the sentiment that I'm kind of getting at. Because if you really want it, then what can stand in your way from getting it? But all that's to say is, unless you actually really know I better lay off today, come back stronger tomorrow, which is a totally valid take. I'm not anti-rest day. I'm just anti-unnecessary rest day. Because there's a difference between, I really went crazy hard the last couple days. I think a little bit of recuperation is in order. Versus, I'm not really feeling like it right now. Rest day. Just because those are the exact same options doesn't mean that it's the same situation by a freaking long shot. So that's something to consider, right? If you or a loved one is considering taking a rest day, and ask yourself this, and this could be anyone who you look up to who really works out hard, but it's would Rich Piana take a rest day? Would Chris Bumstead take a rest day? Would Sam take a rest day? Would Larry Wheels take a rest day? Would, insert whoever is a freaking total beast in your mind, would he take a rest day? Would Baki take a rest day? Pretty damn sure he would not, But that doesn't mean, no, he would never take it. It means, let's look at this objectively. Should I hit legs or should I do a crazy chest day? It's something that requires discretion. That's my main point that I'm trying to get at there. But I can tell that when I get out of the car, my calves are going to be extra tight, because when I'm sitting in the car, my calves are actually a little bit contracted, because I'm not standing up straight with my feet at like 90 degrees to each other. They're kind of like in a reclined position. So if when I get out of the car after I get home, I can stand up and really feel that they're still kind of tense and just full of freaking everything, that's a good sign. That's a good sign that I did a little bit of something calf-wise.